Download your current provider and come to Q Streaming. Get access to over 1,000 local and live TV channels and most series and movies found on multiple streaming platforms. Consolidate them all in one place with Q. By supporting Q, you are supporting the kingdom and ministries like ours. You'll unlock earlier access to our podcasts and content exclusive to Q alone. Scan the QR code for more information.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Circle of Eden podcast. I am Jenness White, and I am joined by my co-host today, Jordan Oliver from the Olive Press. Jordan, thank you so much for being with me today. How are you? How's it been?
Hello, Jen. Everything has been going well as we're full into the holiday season. I truly cannot fathom that we are in and now already halfway through December and thinking about this year, 2025. Looking at 2026, which I know is what our interview is it's gonna get us excited for this new year because so much is happening. But I just feel like 2025 was such a preparation, setting the stage year for what is coming in 2026.
Oh, wow. No, I could not agree more. And that ties perfectly in with our interview today. So we have another amazing repeat guest with us, who is Bill Smith, who is the CEO of Firepoint, who's joining us today, everybody. We're going to do a special prophetic episode. As you know, we're doing a mini series with Bill and just really diving into all the work he's doing in Pennsylvania and Virginia with Firepoint Energy. But this is the interesting thing. As God does, he ties in various individuals and just wraps everything up beautifully in a bow with the resources that we need. And so I was contacted recently by a friend who wanted to provide some information on some of the Kim Clement prophecies and how Bill's work was tying in with those. And he is actually joining us today. His name is Kelsey Cleary. And so we just had an amazing talk backstage, and we decided to invite him into today's interview. Again, totally orchestrated by God. This is how he works. So we kind of strong-armed him into joining us today. And so without leaving our guests waiting, we're going to go ahead and bring them to the forefront and introduce them. Bill, it is always an honor having you on. And Kelsey, welcome to Circle of Eden. How are you guys?
Great. How are you guys doing?
We are doing wonderful. It is always wonderful to see your face, Bill. Jordan and I we love interviewing you, Bill, because you give us just the raw version of everything. There is no sugarcoating. I love how real you are, and I love how God has worked in your life and how just open and honest you are to sharing your experiences. And I love how God communicates with you, because it's often very hilarious, some of the stories that you share and how God is working in your life. And Kelsey, as I said, God just brought you onto the scene today to be part of this. So thank you for, again, being kind of strong-armed into joining us.
It's amazing how God pulls all things together.
He does for such a time as this. And so, guys, I wanted to just start, Bill, you've interviewed with us several times. To our viewers, if we have any new viewers, I strongly recommend you go back and watch interview 1 and 2 with Bill to get up to speed on what we're talking about today. But we have limited time. We have a lot to talk about. So rather than going into an intro with you, Bill, again, everybody go back and watch episode 1 and 2 with Bill Smith to get up to speed. But Kelsey, you are new today to joining us. So just tell everybody a little bit about how you got involved in Firepoint. When did that come on your radar?
Sure. Well, I think like a lot of Christians out there, I'm just one of those average people. I don't have a podcast. I didn't know Bill previously. I'm just a simple brother in the Lord who does believe these prophecies. I've seen, for instance, Kim Clement's prophecies, a lot of those come to pass. And in fact, there was a recent interview where Eric Trump just goes down the laundry list of fulfilled prophecies from that Kim Clement said. I mean, this has got a strong backing by very prominent people. And so I had been reading through these prophecies about this new energy, one of those prophecies that's yet to come, and a lot of talk about this word Firepoint and its ability to convert waste to energy. It's going to be this new source of energy for the world, as Kim saw it, and other prophets, I guess, are seeing this too, or heard this as well years ago. And well, funny enough, just with me being maybe a young person, I look up on Grok and I just go down to just a very short laundry list. Is there a company called Firepoint Energy with a Christian founder that is working on converting waste to energy or landfills to energy? And it said Clear Shot, Firepoint Energy, Bill Smith, CEO. So what I did next is I actually went on YouTube and I just said, where's Bill Smith interviewed at Firepoint, anything along these lines? And my first interview that I watched was on this channel not that long ago, where I watched Jenness and Jordan interview Bill Smith. And I thought it was interesting that there hasn't been this explosion of interviews yet with Bill, and that this was that first Christian channel, it seems, that's interviewing Bill and where Bill's telling his story. And then I wanted to get involved. And so that's where I looked at the Firepoint Energy website, and one thing led to the next, where I actually called the office. It got transferred to Bill's cell, and he took my call on his porch in Pennsylvania and Telton, I believe, Bill, next to the site where he's converting waste coal to fuel and energy, where he'll talk more about that. And that's where I got to get more involved with Firepoint Energy. And it's been this rapid journey ever since, learning more and more and drawing correlations to all these other prophecies and the work that Firepoint Energy is doing and where it's going to go.
I love how God does this, Jordan. Like,
I know. I was going to say the same thing, Jen. It is always, I tell people, Jen and I say this all the time when we're just trying to help people open up to the Holy Spirit and to inviting God into their life. So many people think it's so boring, or God wants to give you this strict life. And it could not be more opposite. It is nothing but an adventure when you open yourself to God and to just following Him. And every day becomes something you could have not asked for or imagined or ever thought possible. So this
Amen.
is, just a prime example, Kelsey. So perfect how you share just how things unfold one step at a time. That's it.
Yeah. And the fact you hit something that I want to touch on again, we did in the last interview, Bill, but the fact that we are the channel that is interviewing you. And we said the same thing. We're like, this is so huge. Why is nobody else interviewing? I know you've had a couple, but as far as like, you would think that this would even be mainstream, but it's not. But then when you get to looking at the prophecies, there's a reason for that. And we're going to dive into that today. But Bill, tell everybody essentially about the media blackout.
Well, actually, that may be coming to an end. The Pittsburgh Tribune came out with a reporter and a photographer, and they're putting a story together on us now. So it will be the first, other than us doing press releases, secular type release coming out. And I believe that there's a reason for it. I think God wants His people in first to get the most. And it can be frustrating at times. Like, really, God, wake them up. Hello. Shake them up in the middle of the night.
Well, I'm going to show this, Bill, and I want you to continue talking, but I'm going to throw this up about some Kim Clement. And for anybody who doesn't know that name, Kim Clement, houseofdestiny.org, the late prophet Kim Clement prophesied about Firepoint for a long time. And so we're going to go into some of his prophetic words today that kind of ties this together. But one of the things was that was huge that I saw right off the bat is that this is supposed to help benefit God's people and prosper God's people. And so it makes sense that it sounds like it is breaking that media blackout, Bill, from what you just told us. That's news to us. But for a while there, it really was a media blackout for you.
Right. No matter what we did, it's like nothing would go out. Nobody cared. Mm-hmm. So I just focused on, let's just do what we're supposed to be doing. Yeah. And just stay on that channel and just keep working. And it was actually, last year, a lady called me up and said, you can be on Rumble on Alphabets. I'm like, what's Rumble? Never heard of Alphabets. And they did a story, and then that kind of exploded. And then you came along when you were with His Glory, and it's now starting to emerge. But it seems like it's emerging in this layer of viewers. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, God, that's how you're going to do it. Go ahead. But some other things are starting to happen. I was a speaker at an event with a bunch of PhDs and professors and highfalutin kind of people, and they asked me to speak on a panel on critical minerals and rare earth minerals, which that's what brought me to Pennsylvania. So I can see that other market of media starting to crack open. And I imagine by the time we go public, it will be out into the general public. We have to release things out into the public for a publicly traded company. But yeah, it's been kind of like undercover for years. Even the technology, when I found it back in 2017, it all seemed like it's going to happen, but just hadn't yet.
Well, and this is interesting to me, everything that you're saying. So this is something, Kelsey, that you have put together. And this first theme, it talks about Kim Clement repeatedly prophesied that a new source of energy would emerge from insignificant materials, trash, junk, dust, bugs, soil. He tied this to the new energy and to the story and miracles of Elijah. And then the first prophecy you reference here, February 2nd, 2007, a new source of energy shall suddenly emerge from the hollow, from nothing, from junk. Bill, you've talked about how you're turning that into energy, landfills into energy in our prior episodes. Number 2 says something significant is going to happen to this nation by a very insignificant event. People are going to ignore it, and God wants them to, speaking to the point I was just making about the media blackout. God wants them to think it is not worth anything, of no value. God's going to take of your dust. He's going to take of your trash. He's going to take of your soil. He's going to take of your bugs, something insignificant, and make it into the greatest source of energy for the world. And that was February 3rd. I think that's actually 2007 is that the year there. And then I think it was 2007. I double checked that because I was like, oh, wow, we got a prophecy from 2027.
Well, I wonder
if that's not a mistake.
That's what I was just going to say. Maybe that's not. Let's start February 3rd, 2027.
Now, isn't that interesting? You guys remember that date because sometimes this stuff happens and it's for a reason. That's very interesting, Jordan. I know. I was thinking that when you said it, I was like, maybe that's not, because Kim talks a lot about the year 2027 being very prosperous for his people. Number 3 says, I'm also going to tell you about Firepoint. One of the things Elijah did was he was able to take from the earth, from the trees. He was able to heal, take poison out of the pot, restore something that was lost in the water. And he did that because he understood the power that God had given to man to have dominion over the earth and over creation. That was from June 21st, 2012. Kelsey and Bill, would either one of you want to kind of comment on this and just kind of what God led you to as far as conclusions with all of this? Obviously, it's everything, Bill, that you're doing right now.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kelsey.
My only quick point would be for a lot of people who don't know about the project that Bill is starting with waste coal. Coal is really simply pressed trees deep in the earth.
Right.
Could have likely happened from the flood where we had a lot of trees fall down and the tectonic plates press things under. In a sense, when you press coal and make it and under that much heat, it turns into diamonds. Essentially, you're basically turning trees into diamonds. The other interesting thing is, so you're essentially in that prophecy, it looks like you're taking something from trees and renewing the purpose of those. And then also taking the poison out of the pot. What was interesting there is there's a lot of poison that's leaked from waste coal and all those millions of tons across the United States, poison leaked into water. And essentially your bill is able to clean all that up while simultaneously producing a tremendous amount of energy from a source that is beyond waste. We're talking stuff that has already been used, and trees, in a sense, that have already been used, and reusing those for a phenomenal source of energy.
The waste coal we use is basically the dirt and rock and some coal that was not didn't have enough energy to go to a power plant. So they just literally fill in valleys. They create mountains of this stuff. There are 9,700 of these piles in Pennsylvania alone, and it has no value. But when it rains on these piles, it picks up those minerals in it, which are rare earth elements, which we can use today because of computers and TVs, smartwatches, electric cars, and so on. But don't drink it, because it's toxic. So we actually remove those minerals out of the water. On this site is a waste coal acid mine drainage pond. And the governmental department that's in charge of making the environment better drilled a hole down into the coal mine, and all that stuff runs into the coal mine that's under our feet. The coal mine's about 250 feet deep here. it runs 8 miles in one direction and 8 miles in a different direction. They said that waste coal mine, the coal mine is within 20 feet of the surface of being full, and it's full of this acid mine drainage. So when we go outside and turn our faucet on for the outside well, it's orange looking water coming straight out of the pipe. And that means people that are drinking out of wells here are getting this stuff too. And that holds true everywhere there's an old coal mine and a waste coal pile. The site I wanted to do before this, there's a 3-acre acid mine drainage pond on site. And when the owners, DEP said, okay, we'll pay you to clean the water up. And so for 1 month they did it, second month they did it. Third month they said, well, we're not going to pay anymore. So they went out and pulled the sluices out. And this stuff runs out of that pond. It goes down through a creek. That creek goes into the Allegheny River. That's all across PA. And if we get rid of the waste coal pile, we get rid of the source of the acid mine drainage. At the same time, we're making energy, fuels, rare earth elements, pulling all the good out of this. And even to the point, I believe that our world will one day be a hydrogen society. That we can take this dirty water and run it through our process and pull pure hydrogen out. So there'll be hydrogen for trains, which Cummins has a train engine that runs on hydrogen. There'll be hydrogen for industrial processes and eventually cars. And, we looked at building a hydrogen highway at one time across the country. And basically we could take 10 landfills across the country and produce the garbage into energy and fuels, and then also make hydrogen so you could refuel hydrogen cars. But there aren't any hydrogen cars. They're all locked up in California. So this is what's going to be coming out over the next decades. And even flying cars will be no longer battery powered. They're going to be hydrogen powered. It's just a better energy source. So.
Yeah, this is fascinating. And it's, it ties in so well with these Kim Clement words. And Kelsey, you were talking about comparing Bill and what he's doing to Elijah, which is what Kim was talking about. Can you talk about Zarephath, which actually means refinery, and how that kind of ties in as well?
It was interesting. The only reason I started looking up different words is it was either after a conversation with Bill that I had over the phone a while back, or it was actually on one of these other interviews earlier where he started talking about the meaning of different names or different towns that he was brought to. And so I just started doing the same thing. Wherever I saw a location in some of these prophecies, I started looking up the definition. And the old Hebrew name Zarephath or Zarephath means refinery. What are the odds of that? That Elijah was told, go here and go to the refinery. And Kim, the detail about the woman and what she had to gather to help produce this oil, this energy, the sticks, the dust, the stones, in a sense, exactly what Bill's saying, the sticks, the what's mixed in with that, with the coal. And Firepoint does landfills too. They're starting with coal. But what was just interesting is that correlation. And that Bill, in his past interviews, he talks about how he hears from God directly, how he walks obediently with the Lord and his past in that. And, Kim Clement and I believe his daughter spoke about that mantle of Elijah that would go out across the world. It seems like there's just so much correlation here. So that was something I really caught my eye, particularly when I saw Zarephath and the refinery and the correlation to Firepoint Energy.
Yeah, that I had never thought about that. And I don't think that's anything we've ever touched on any of the other interviews, is that correlation. I think that was, again, these are little tidbits, little nuggets that God, just the Holy Spirit weighs on your heart for you to follow down these little trails, and they lead to this incredible revelation. And just so anybody watching, these again are from houseofdestiny.org. They have a prophecy database. So all these that I'm showing you can go to, again, houseofdestiny.org to learn more about those prophetic words. So that is, I know, Kelsey, we're on a time crunch with you. You've got about 7 minutes. You gave us all this incredible information. Was there anything in the last, 7 to 10 minutes that you wanted to touch on before we have to let you go? I have some slides. Anything that you gave me prophetic word wise, I have right now. So if you wanted to touch on any of these other themes, we certainly can.
I'll let you touch on anything that you'd like after I drop. The only thing I would add is I used to have this sort of striving mentality. We got to make this Firepoint Energy work, and I realized God has got just a few people's faith and obedience. This is going to play out exactly as it's supposed to. And if there's a cover over it right now, as that prophecy said before, God has put a cover over it. He, people will ignore it, and he wants them to, which means it's going to go slowly. There's two other prophecies I'm pretty sure. I remember one of them where Kim correlates this process as a caterpillar. He's like, look to the sign of the caterpillar, how slow it's moving, and how it looks. It's crawling, and all of a sudden, beautiful butterfly. We could certainly be in a process like that right now, and everything aligns because if it looks like it's going slow, what we're expected to see in a lot of these prophecies, even where Kim Clement talks about silver and a variety of other things, nothing, and then suddenly everybody knows about it, and there's a large eruption out of it, and the correlation with that volcano too. We'll see.
Bill, you were chuckling at the butterfly. Is that how you feel like a caterpillar?
Yeah. We were actually in a place called Santa Cruz, California for a while, staying in a place off the grid. Interesting experience. And all of a sudden, all of these caterpillars start showing up everywhere. They're stepping on caterpillars, and they were a mess. And then I was up on the 4th floor, and I was looking at one morning, all of those caterpillars began to turn into butterflies, and the whole place was just covered in butterflies. So it is an interesting emerging that when it's finished of the pupation part, you're in this covering, you're wrapped up, and nothing's happening, it seems, and everything's going backwards, sideways, and just being difficult. And one day it changes. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've sensed that we're coming into, is that shift and change. We wanted to be public back in November, and it's like everything just kept getting in our path and stalling things. I'm like, really, man? You can make these people work faster. Come on, get with the program, guy. Of course, I think he puts me on ignore, So, but when you talked about Elijah, when I started reading the Bible, I like those guys, Elijah and Elisha. I was like, hey, can we call down fire again? That'd be kind of cool. But I looked at what they did in their lifetime, and you don't see that anywhere else in the Bible. Isaiah was a great prophet, but it wasn't the same as Elijah and Elisha. So I always call those guys my buddies. And, the miracles God did through them in tough situations. And in fact, when I got married, Heather said, oh, I want to see miracles like you did. I said, no, you don't. No, you don't. You're so far jammed up into a corner and so far going over the falls that, if God doesn't do a miracle, you're done. And that's usually where I see the miracles. But I understand even that process of being pushed is still God too. Mm-hmm. When I was in Masada in Israel, and I was looking over the side of this mountain, this ramp they built, and I was sitting there thinking, man, it would take me months with a bulldozer to build this, and they just did this with 14,000 slave buckets and shovels. And that's where the Lord spoke to me. He said, this is how determined Satan is to take you out. Well, what did I do? But it's not what I've done up to that point. It's what will be released. And, that's what Satan's trying to do, is stop us all. And you just have to be a little bit thicker headed than he is and just keep plowing forward. And that's all I know, is just keep going forward. 1 foot, sometimes half a foot, sometimes a quarter of a foot forward, and just don't stop. And don't look back and don't look down.
Well, Bill, that's like your dream. Can you share your dream? Is that something you're okay sharing on this interview about the hands, the playing the cards? Because what you just said all epitomized in that dream.
So when I'm in this dream, I'm sitting by this kitchen table, God sitting on one end and Satan sitting the other end. And in the middle was this big pot of like money and gold and houses. And it's like I was sitting on top of this pile. And I go around and I look at Satan's cards, and he's got like 4 aces and 3 aces and 2 kings. I was like, and there are a couple of aces and kings on the table, so I reversed the poker
Hold
that
on,
is. They
Bill.
were
Hold
playing.
on, Bill.
And he
You
just had his-
froze there. Can you
Wait
go back?
1 second. Yeah, you froze on my end too. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Start. You were talking
So-
about the card game and what was in the hand. Start there.
So in Satan's hand, there were these aces and kings, and there were aces and kings on the table. So it's like, game over, you won. And I go around to God's hand, and he's got like a 2 and a joker and a blank card. And I'm like, oh man, I'm screwed. and Satan's just grinning, and he lays his cards out on the table. And God just kind of looks over his cards and goes, he lays out his cards, and it's all aces. You can't do that. And Satan's like, you're cheating, you're cheating, you're cheating. And God just said, but it's my game.
Ah, I love that.
If we remember this is God's game. It's not the devil's.
Yeah.
So if God's on our side before us, who can be against us?
Amen. I
That's
love
it.
that. That had to have come from God. I mean, that is just a total God, thing to do. And he has such a sense of humor with you,
Oh,
Bill. The way he talks to you and shows you things is, I love hearing about it. Kelsey, I know we're at our time limit. Was there anything else you wanted to say in closing before we have to sadly let you go?
Bill, I pray for you most days, not every day. And I just know faith and obedience. I was reading Psalm 20 and 21, just talking about victory. And that's what I'm praying over myself and for you as well. And this team, Jordan, Jenness. This just takes faith and obedience. And we're going to see this thing.
well,
Change.
doesn't it say, I will make a way where there is no way?
Yep.
So that times you're going to arrive at a place where there is no way. And then I just wait and look around and say, well, where are you at? Because you're going to make a way because there is no way. And it just has to be the faith of a child. Just, all right, God, I trust you. I'm just going to keep going. I don't understand it, and I don't know how we're going to do this. And I'm always like, how are you going to pull this out of your hat? Quite often. So,
Bill,
Yeah.
Jenness and I, that's exactly, we were talking this morning on the phone, and I was reminded in that conversation about 12 years ago when God first started speaking to me, calling me into following him. I'll never forget, he said, the new sound is coming, and the key will be childlike faith. And so that's the time that we're in. So that's amazing that you mentioned that. But I'm actually going to jump off with Kelsey as well, guys, because I have another interview I have to get to. So, I'll just go off with him so that we don't interrupt the end of the interview. But thank you so much, Bill, Kelsey. So wonderful seeing you guys again, and so much more to come. I will be praying for this team and everything that is unfolding as well.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. Kelsey, thank you again for being with us today. You guys stay blessed, and we'll talk soon.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
God bless.
All right. Bill, it's just you and I.
yeah.
Hey, we can do this. We got to finish strong here. I have a couple other things that Kelsey sent over that I'd love to go over with you.
Sure.
Because what Jordan and I notice a lot of times when we get questions, everybody is interested, which is really cool because I think people are really starting to open up to the supernatural part of
Right.
the battle we're in, and the fact that, yes, you can have a personal relationship with God. Yes, God can speak to people, and making that normal. Whereas before, nobody, it felt like, was really open to that except for very few people. And now more and more, I feel like it's still a select group of people, but more opening up to the idea, I should say. And so a lot of the questions we get are about the supernatural. And so they're very interested in the prophetic. And so I wanted to go, if you're good, I wanted to go through a couple more slides that Kelsey had sent over. And then I want to give everybody at the end, so they have to wait for it, the update to Firepoint and where you're at and what happens next. So, all right. The next thing I wanted to go over, prophetic words. This was the sign of the tree. And you and I have touched on this, but I like how Kelsey tied these together. The first one is, look to the tree, for the tree is a sign of that which will come with the E, says the Spirit of the Lord. A new source of energy is now rapidly coming to pass. That is December 31st, 2006. The second one said, your scientists shall say, what we have found What we have discovered in a root will bring significant changes to our nation's progress with the crisis of energy. Crisis, says the Spirit of God. Crisis is hidden opportunity for me. October 20th, 2007. And 3 was one of the things Elisha did was he was able to take from the earth, from the trees, and he was able to heal, take poison out of the pot, restore something that was lost in the water, which we just talked about, that third one. But did the first 2 speak to you in any way? And I really want you to talk about the ticker symbol of your first company and how that kind of ties in, and the logo with this prophecy.
So a tree is molecules. Plastic is molecules. Coal is molecules. Gasoline, jet fuel, diesel fuel, ethanol, methanol. Pretty much everything we touch on this planet is a form of molecules that have combined to create something. If you take the molecules apart, you have atoms. To take an atom apart, you need, in our case, a gasifier, which is a machine that starves the material of oxygen and applies a lot of great heat. And the heat we use comes from plasma being the fourth state of matter. And it's like lightning bolts being released inside of this gasifier, which then tear the molecules apart to come back into atoms. And then those atoms combine into a gas called syngas, or carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen. And actually, one of the first issues I ever had is, but God, that says syngas. It's got sin in it. We can't do that. But if you look at it, a lot of our waste is sin. We're throwing stuff away. Why aren't we reusing it? So take a lightning bolt, tear molecules apart, make a gas, turn the gas into gasoline, jet fuel, diesel fuel, methanol, ethanol, or electricity. So we're redefining energy. And on this site, funny enough, that's happening is they're going to build a solar plant on this property. And I asked them, can I have all the trees? And they're like, yeah, why? I said, because I can turn them into jet fuel. So we'll take all the trees that they cut down on this property, grind them up, and run them along with our coal and make jet fuel out of those as well. We don't get rare earth minerals out of it, but we'll get more jet fuel. So everything has a value if you don't, for lack of better terms, you don't demonize it and say, well, how can I use this? And that's basically what Elijah and Elisha were doing back in the old days, is, using what was available. And that's what we're doing here. And again, we started out by looking to turn garbage in landfills, not the methane they produce, but the actual diapers and tires and trees and paper and plastics that are thrown into landfills today and buried, digging that up, all that garbage, and turning it into a gas to make electricity. So we can make any nation energy independent with what they're throwing away. It's all good.
Well, and it all ties in with these words as well. So it's good for the environment. It's good for energy. It's good for, there's no real downside to this. I'm not seeing any downside to it. And the interesting thing too, Bill, is Kim was talking about the source of energy, and he was talking about symbols, and he said the tree, which you've touched on a bit, but I want you to tell everybody the story of the leaf. And then he also said he saw something with an X and a P in it, as you can see here. And he couldn't quite see everything. He said, I saw an X, and I think there may have been a number, and then something else, and then a P. That was from March 15th, 2011.
And it was a company worth investing in, but I can't speak about it because they could sue me.
Okay. Well, we won't touch on that. I'm just showing the prophetic word, so we'll leave that one. We'll leave that one tabled then. We definitely don't want to go there then. But I just think it's very interesting that he put all this out. And then number 5 says, you mentioned lightning just a second ago. And number 5 says, God is releasing a force of lightning. Code Breakers has worked out something so close to Firepoint. It's a very clear word about lightning and how resources are going to come through this. And that was from December 31st, 2012. And you were explaining a little bit more about how this could tie in pre-show. So I want our viewers to hear what you had told us.
Well, let's start with number 5. If you go to YouTube, type in adaptive, ADAPTIVE adaptive arc, all one word. And there's a video on there. That's the company that we acquired that built plasma gasifiers using lightning bolts to tear molecules apart. And Had they succeeded, I wouldn't be talking here today, but they had issues come along in their company collapsed, and we acquired the company back in 2020, spent $1.5 million in engineering to build this machine, lightning bolt in a machine to rip molecules apart into atoms. Back in the X and the P, I started a company called XL Plus back 1999. Yeah, because my daughter was born. And I was trying to buy a chemical company out of Texas, and the investors in the investment group we had involved flipped the deal on us. The owner of the company was mad at me for a year, 6 months to a year. And my wife at the time said, well, why don't you just start a new company? I said, you have to design logos and graphics and blah, blah, blah. It's too expensive. And I don't even know what to name the company. She literally went to the bathroom and came back and said, XL Plus. I said, what's that? She goes, that's the name of the company, XL Plus. I said, that's a stupid name. And I heard the Lord say, oh, really? But I like it. So we started XL Plus back then. I took it public in 2003. It just wouldn't take off. We kept hitting roadblocks. Our ticker symbol on the stock market was XLPI. And when Kim's prophecy came out about the X and the P, I had just come back from Israel. I was looking at a prophecy because buyer, he said, go and look. So I looked at, and for some reason I pulled up Kim's prophecy that day, March 15, 2011, and he talked about the company, the X and the P in it. And L, XLPI, L is the Roman numeral for 50, and I is the Roman numeral for 1. So there are numbers in that name, and that's our stock symbol, XLPI. And right now we're merging that company with Firepoint to take Firepoint public.
That is incredible.
Again, 2011, nothing happened.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
kind of like, don't worry about it.
But the timing and all the information you're building, though, like this was all a process to build to where you are today.
We had somebody actually, the company was parked for years, and somebody actually in 2023, came in and took over the company in a court order in Nevada. I didn't even know about it. And so we had to buy the company back, redeem it, so that we could merge it with Firepoint, because I knew that these two companies had to merge. And we're in the process of that now. We should be publicly traded. I give you my opinion. I give you the lawyer's opinion, but we're looking at the end of January, 1st of February of next year. We were pushing for November this year. And we've already submitted stock symbols, and all these things are going on in the background. But there's no effort in it this time. There's no fighting for it. There's no pushing on it. It's just unfolding. And I'm walking in those unfoldings as they unfold. And I found too that, like, if you're doing something and it doesn't go anywhere, stop, back up. There's something else you're supposed to finish before God opens that door. And I found that as you do that, it gets more peaceful in the walk. So XL Plus will become Firepoint. They'll be on the OTC markets. I believe we're supposed to then move that to NASDAQ. We've been in stealth mode for 2 decades. But I yesterday just spoke on a panel at Penn State University with a lot of PhDs and stuff on rare earth and critical minerals here. Department of Energy was there. And, they're asking me for advice. I'm like, wow. Don't have PhDs. I don't even have a DVD or an MP3. I mean, I ain't got none of those acronyms. But I found that even like in the Bible, God will promote somebody and put them in front of pharaohs and stuff and give them wisdom like a Joseph. That's just supernatural. And that's what I say. And I would say, start listening to what God's saying, because he's always speaking. We're just not listening. We're tuning him out. And I think we need to tune back into these little nudges and soft speaking, because what happened with Elijah, God rips rocks apart, tears trees out of the ground, and then came a still small voice.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we should be listening, is in that. And that's what I'm focusing more and more in my life into, that still small voice. So I'll get up at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and just wait on the Lord to say something. And I expect that every day. And that's another thing too, is I think we have to release those expectations for him to speak to us, to show us. And then we'll start seeing where he's been doing that. We just didn't recognize it that way. So
Yeah.
back into answering about the prophetic is you just have to tune your life into those things and observe them.
Yeah.
My current wife said, I never see Jesus. I never see angels. So number one, shut up, stop saying that, and start saying, I see angels, I see Jesus. And now she's starting to see angels, see Jesus. So that rudder in our mouth needs to be guiding us towards things, not away from things.
Oh, yeah. Life and death is in the power of the tongue and what you speak out. And this is just a great philosophy for life. I mean, it is biblical, but just to listen to God, because there's so much noise, Bill, with the internet, and there's, a million things you can tune into.
Facebook.
Everybody's either on their phone or their screens. Yeah. Got to listen to God. You got to make time. It's a relationship. You have to cultivate it. And that's what Jordan and I teach through her curriculum Drafted, is how to tune in and to listen. A lot of times when we pray, we're speaking what we want, or what, we're making requests. And yet we don't take the time to listen to what God has to say. And once you start doing that, it becomes easier and easier. If anybody listening, just do it. Do it once, continue to do it. He will speak. Go ahead, Bill. What were you going to say?
Well, if God's always speaking and we're not listening, and you're right, we're tuned into things. I like the little cartoon. You see these people in heaven and they're like staring at their hands, and like Peter saying, like, I don't know what they're looking at. It's our phones. You can use the phone as a tool or a distraction. And I think when I came into this, a guy came into my business, and that was a whole experience about belt buckles, filling the whole room with Jesus Christ and a cross. And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to hell in about 2 minutes. There's a lightning bolt coming through that window. That's how God got my attention. And he gave me a Bible. And I said, either this is all real or it's all bull. You have to prove this is real. I'm not here to prove it's real. I want to see if it's real. And as he was talking earlier, I've done 3-day fast, 7-day fast, 14-day fast, 40-day fast, fast with no food and no water at times, fast with just water. And it's not to do anything, I believe, except make us focus back on what we need to be focusing on. And there are things I prayed and fasted about years ago that still haven't come to pass, but I know they will. And when you're talking about God speaking, one day I was leaving my sister's house and I just started speaking in the Spirit. I couldn't stop. It was like a river running out. And I was driving around, and I was going down to my parents' shop. And as I got to this bank, my hand shot out and said, the Lord said, you'll have $60 million in your personal checking account there. I was so broke, I couldn't buy a church mouse a piece of cheese. And I was like, well, can you write me a check? So I know those things are coming. He told me one day when I finished up a book, he said, because you've not asked for wealth, I'll give you long life and wealth. It's like, cool, can you write me a check? And now I'm in a project that takes millions of dollars. We've raised and gone through almost $3 million. We're going to raise roughly $300 million in the next round, and then $3 billion. It was kind of this morning, it was kind of like, stop saying between 1 to 3 and 1 to 300 million and 1 to 3 billion. Pick one. I said, all right, fine. I want 300 million and 3 billion. They're bigger numbers. So I know this is about to erupt. I know it's about to come out. And my take on the 2027 word that Kelsey was talking about was, we're going through the permitting process. We'll build our equipment, but it really will be 2027 before we really fire all this stuff up. Just because of permitting and building equipment and all the things we're pulling together. Because like you said earlier, it never goes as fast as you want to. God works like a caterpillar mode, and we want to be butterflies. And he's like, nah, you got to keep creeping and crawling until I wrap you up in a blanket, and then you'll emerge and do what you can do.
Well, and Bill, why do you believe that God is doing this? We talked a little bit in the beginning about a media blackout, and it's giving an opportunity for God's people who are tuned in, and God is kind of leading them down this road. And to go into that a little bit more is this word from June 16th. There he went with the 2027. I think it was 2007, but who knows? 2027 keeps popping up on these. Yeah. But he's talking here about here in bold where it says, my church to prosper first. And, it's talking about a righteous man who will take it and say, I have patented it for the kingdom of God, which you've continued to say you're doing it for God. You're doing it because he told you to, and you're walking out in obedience. What's the bigger picture here for God's people?
So some things I've seen for the future, the term I was giving was enrichment centers. That
Yes.
the church center system would basically change and people would come to enrichment centers almost like a boot camp to get what they need to be trained up to be prophetic, apostolic, miracle work, or whatever, and then sent out. And literally, we were in California with a guy named Dr. O out in Venice Beach. And he said, yeah, the Lord's showing us we're going to buy this property down near this big lake out of LA. And we're going to build this center. And we'll come in and we're going to train you up and teach you and stuff. And then we're going to kick you out. I said, that's an enrichment center. I believe that we're not supposed to be spending weeks, months, and years going around the hamster wheel learning the same stuff over and over. We need tools and resources. I mean, when I first thought of this and met Kim, I was like, yes, I want Kim at our to teach at our places. It's not possible to do. So, well, either we're going to get new prophets or God's going to do something different. So if I look at that, all of that even goes back to what Lance Wallnow said at 2008 at the Kingdom Economic Summit. This end time harvest will take billions and billions of dollars. And that's to me what the transferring of wealth is about, which literally in 2017, God said, move to California and transfer the wealth. I was like, woohoo, I'm in. If I didn't know what I was going through, I went, nah, I'll pass.
Yeah.
To the point, to such a degree, when we were leaving California, I said, God, you said move to California, transfer the wealth. Where is it? And in the box I was putting in the car at that time was these patented technologies relating to plasma gasification. So it doesn't look the way you think it's going to look. It doesn't come out the way you think it's going to come out, but it will be right when it's done. Again, we can't speed things up, can't slow things down. So if all of this is true, my wrestling with God for a long time was, why do you want to clean up the planet when you're going to trash it? You're going to be a new earth, a new heaven. Like, I'm cleaning up and you come along like, yeah, I'm done. What the heck? You know?
Yeah.
But it's not about that. It's about wealth transfer. And that covering you said we've been under, and that's really what it's been, is I want my church blessed first. And then the world will come in. The pharaohs will come in. The kings will come in. And they will make what we're doing worth more to the people that got in early.
Yeah.
So,
and will you go a little bit more, because I know you really have a heart for this. I mean, you gave away, I think you said $30 million and said, all right, God, I'm walking in obedience with you, showing God that you're all about him, not about money. And this really is, you mentioned enrichment centers a little bit more in detail. Jordan and I talked about what we call secret places, which
right.
is places of refuge for God's people to go for healing, for various things. And of course, you need money to fund these things. But I think that there really is this twisted vision of a wealth transfer among podcasts sometimes about like, what does that actually mean for God's people? So can you go into what God has really shown you about what the wealth transfer is supposed to be and what it's not as well?
So I'm like 10 years old. We lived in Lampasas, Texas. I say that if you gave us money, we could be poor. That's how poor we were. And I was walking across the field. I just made a little wagon, and the sky spoke to me and said, you'll build a Fortune 500 company. I was like, what's that? I can build you a wagon. And my whole life's been driven towards business. Not by choice. I was in construction most of my life. But construction actually taught me how to build a business, because there's a process in construction from clearing the land to the finished product, and the same thing in business. And you're always going to have this difficult place. I always used to call it my a-hole tree. There was always a tree that just didn't want to come out. And when you learn to deal with difficulties, you can keep moving forward, but people hit a difficulty and they stop.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're transferring wealth, the wealth of the wicked's laid up for the just. So I used to go, well, but if we become wealthy, are we wicked? Because you say it's the wealth of the wicked, but it's just a transferring. Pharaoh transferred to Joseph the right to bring in wealth, which fed all of Egypt and all of God's people at the time. And then God dried it up. Why? Because I've heard people say, well, if Joseph would have kept his mouth shut, he wouldn't have been thrown in the well. I say, if Joseph had kept his mouth shut, the famine would have killed everybody, because the famine was coming. And God had prepared Joseph to deal with this famine. I mean, literally, let me look at your resume. Okay, you've been in jail. You committed adultery, yada, yada, yada. You're sold into slavery. Okay, I'll make you second in charge. You know, I mean,
exactly.
that's not quite normal. So I believe there's a transferring of information, wisdom, and knowledge that we need to grab a hold of, take it back for the kingdom, which is what Lance talks about in the Seven Mountain Prophecy, is God wants his stuff back. And because we as a religious system have pushed it away and said, well, that's secular.
Yes.
Yeah. I was at a business meeting one night and they were going on and on about, corporations are wicked. They're all from Satan, and Satan rules the companies and rules money and yada, yada, yada. And I just come from the Kingdom Economic Summit. And I said, can I ask a question? And they're like, sure. I said, so you're telling me we go to work every day for Satan and we bring the money to the church? That seems kind of stupid. So is money evil? I mean, yeah, there are people that make it evil, but it's just money. I mean, if I'm cold, I can light dollar bills on fire and heat myself, but what do you buy with $1 anymore? So wealth, even today, is. I remember when there was a guy in my neighborhood in Virginia who was on the Forbes Fortune 400 list, and he was worth $60 million. It's like, wow, that's awesome. Today, to get on that same list, you need to have $3 billion to get at the bottom of the list. So wealth is out there. Why are we not bringing it in to repurpose and use it? It's because we have to get rid of this religious mindset about money, about wealth transfers. Abraham was rich.
Yeah.
David was rich. Solomon was rich. Jesus was rich. If he wasn't rich, why did they gamble for his robe?
Oh, that's a good point.
Oh, no, that's one of them Walmart robes. We don't need those. We can get those cheap. No, it was valuable. So I think the religious debates have messed us up for years.
Yeah.
But that harvest that, I think different people have gotten the vision for, like you guys, that you need money to carry that vision out.
Yeah.
And I know that the first center God took me to in Virginia, it's in Surrey, Virginia. He said, I'll speak to you when you put boots on the ground. So I put on my cowboy boots and I went over there and he said, I want this to be a healing place for wounded warriors. So I think we discussed before, in one context, it could be military people that are coming out, but it can also be Christians who've been out on the front lines that are just beat the heck.
Yeah.
And they need a place to rest.
Yes.
But in that resting, they need to be repurposed and re-energized. And, I think that's the purpose of all this. And so it takes money. So what? There's the Forex market. I think I spoke about that once before. Foreign currency exchanges is how we buy a German car and the money goes to Germany, and they buy a Coke in Germany and the money comes to America. That's the foreign currency exchange. That currency exchange between Europe and the US dollar exchanges, I think last time I looked, was like $3.5 trillion every single day. It goes back and forth between these two countries. Back when I started, the whole market was $3.5 trillion. Today, just that group, I think it's already probably in the 4 trillions a day by now. And collectively, it's probably about 6 trillion a day. So we don't understand how much money's out there. It's mind-boggling. And we're like, man, if I could save money on a Coke, I won't buy a Coke and I'll do this. Well, if that's what you can do, that's great. But there's more. And I think that's where this mental shift and the spiritual shift has to happen.
Well, I think your company in particular, when you talked about Lance Wallno, I watch him quite frequently. And, one of the biggest things he's known for is the 7 mountains of influence. And like you said, for anybody who doesn't know, you're talking about arts and entertainment, government, religion,
family,
media, business, all of these. And what has happened is we've gotten nice and cozy on our religious mountain. And we're like, oh, like you said, that's all secular. We don't care about that. Right. But whoever controls that controls the narrative. This is why kids have no idea what their gender is because who controls that? They are in control of the narrative. And
they're setting the stage.
They are setting the precedent. And so, yes, that is one of the biggest lies from the enemy is that we shouldn't be at the top of those mountains because we should be. And to do that, you have to be successful. Yes.
Right. No, that's prideful. I mean, I wrestled with that for years. I mean, I'm supposed to live in a mud hut in Africa, and that's what I should be doing for my life. And you know, it's the furthest thing from what God has planned for my life. Not that I won't, but, and it's because that's what the church propagated for so long, you know. And so if somebody does become wealthy in ministry, they're criticized, and, you know, but I think all the business people that are sitting in churches need to be reprogrammed into your business is a ministry. And, and I got that back years ago. I went to Houston and I was sitting with a guy that owned the oil company, and he wanted me to be the worldwide marketing manager. So I went down and talked to him, and he goes, nah, I'm not going to do that anymore. He said, but even business can be a ministry. And that flipped a switch in my brain that hasn't flipped off. And literally in our business today, where we're at, this business is a ministry to the people. It's giving them jobs. It's giving them an income. It's giving them a purpose that isn't here where we're at in rural PA. And I've gotten to counsel and minister to people every day. So I view this as much a ministry as I do business. And I know that as we grow, it's to put me in front of other people. I was involved with a group way back in my early years, teens, 19 through 24. And I was reading a book that was put up by one of the guys I was dealing with. He's now since passed. And the Lord says, write a script. What? I know how to do the movies now, but I don't write scripts. So I downloaded all this stuff on writing scripts. And I'm like, it didn't look hard. So I wrote a script. And I said, but why would you want this to be a movie? He said, I want a soul. See, that's what he's always after, souls. Jesus left the 99 for the one. Yeah. And I found that over and over and over in my life, that I'll go to a place, another country, and I'll meet a person that God wants to speak to or talk to. I was 2021, I'm blowing blood out of my nose, and I went up in the hospital, and I fought that spirit off like crazy. But I'd had a dream about a woman coming in my room with an angel, a big angel. And the second night I'm in there, this nurse walks in. She was only there that one night. She was a traveling nurse. And when she walked in, there was a big angel with her. And I said, okay, so you're the reason I'm here. So I believe God will use everything to reach somebody. The problem is we're usually, well, bring them to church, let's do this. But if we're going to go out in the field, which is what enrichment centers will be about, we've got to have the tools and resources to do it and understand. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, and I think that's where this is headed with this wealth transfer is, you know, it's ultimately to benefit God's kingdom. And so, you know, the more God gives you, the more expectation he has for you to steward that money, you know, like the parable of the talents, you know, to multiply that, to help others. And so I believe I know he gives us these God-inspired ideas, Bill, for the purpose of his kingdom and what he's doing here. Like you said, you went to the hospital that day and then you realized why you were there. He puts you in these situations. He gives you these things. But if we don't have that relationship with him to know what to do with it, then, you know, he's not going to continue to give. And you brought something up earlier and then you went on. I want to come back to it. Yes. Well, and when you said that, I want to talk about, because you said, well, if something like if that door's not closing or opening and that it seems closed and everything seems to be shutting down, you haven't done something that you're supposed to do. Like take a breath, think about it. Talk about that for a minute, because I think some people too say, well, you know, don't despise small beginnings. And you gave your wealth up, started back over. Like, how long should you be staying in that period before you feel like, okay, something's off and I need to continue? You know, something I'm not doing, or I'm missing something. There's a piece missing. Like, what wisdom would you tell us through your?
So God opens the door.
Okay.
Why?
It's as simple as that.
I shut doors no man can open. How many people are covered by no man? Adam, Eve, to Larry, and Steve. I open doors no man can shut. That means when God opens the door, nobody can shut it. But I think we locked it. But if a door opens, we have to do something called go through the door. And even here in the project, it's like we're trying to do something. It's just not working. Now I just stop. Okay, there's something else I need to do. Like we have a big lake we have to dig out. And all of a sudden DEP says, somebody from DEP said, you can't dig it out till you get your permit until this guy comes on the 18th. So another week from now. Well, I want it done now, you know? I think it's a good time now because I bought $10,000 or at least $10,000 worth of mats for our big excavator to go out there, and I can't use them. So it's like, okay, what do you want to finish first? So now we're finishing up some other things that are kind of on my bucket list of things to do here. And I believe that when you've done those things in the order God wants them in, then he releases the next thing, and you do what he's releasing for that season. Then he shuts this door, he opens this door, do this stuff. And if you go back and look through your life, your whole life, you'll see there were times you're trying to do this, it didn't work, but this came along and you do this, and you still wind up where you want to go. And so
Yeah.
Let go, let God. How long does it last till he's done doing what he's doing?
Yeah. No, that is such wise advice, to let go, let God, and remember, we're not in control. We try to control everything. It's natural. Our flesh wants to control everything. We're not in charge of anything.
I remember when groups were saying, let's go to Israel, let's do this and this, that way Jesus will come sooner. I'm like, you are stupid. He's going to come when he's supposed to come, not before, not because look, they're down there doing that. Let's go down and meet them. It doesn't work that way. This is his rodeo.
That's absolutely right. Well, Bill, I have kept you for 2 hours today, so I'm not going to keep you. I'll let you get back to work. I know you've got a lot to do, but I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. In closing, was there anything else you wanted to share? You said we can look for probably, I would say, in your newsletter in January to hear something.
Get on our website, sign up for our newsletter. Right now, our attorney is pegging us at end of January, 1st of February for us to be public. We're actually filing at FINRA to change the name of XL Plus on the stock market and the symbol to Firepoint. And then we have to do an event in courts in Oklahoma to do what's called a triangle merger. And then when that comes together, I think it takes like 40 days for FINRA to mess around with it. Of course, now we have holidays in here. So we're targeting end of January, 1st of February-ish. But we'll keep you posted on the newsletter. Perfect.
And tell everybody in closing where they can go for your website to know more and to sign up for your newsletter.
Our website is Firepoint, FIREPOINT.energy, not .com. Energy is our extension. So it's Firepoint. There you go.
Firepoint.energy. All right, Bill. Thank you so much. We'll continue this. Thank you so much for blessing us with all of your knowledge and wisdom. And we're going to pray for you, Bill, and pray for Firepoint. So again, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Take care. All right, everybody. We thank you so much for joining us today. Now, I just want to be clear, we are not offering financial advice. However, please pray about everything you heard today. And so we just thank you so much for being with us. And until next time, create your own circle of Eden right where you are. Stay blessed.